Making a commitment to excellence. Is that really important? Do we need to do that? Is that going to help us in our business and in our family life? Are we going to get much more return just because we've done that little bit extra? In this interview with Mark Sais, we talk about how his journey from being a nurse to a wrestler to starting his own business and how that business is thriving on taking a few key steps that help him stand out and his commitment to excellence.
Welcome to Share.Care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.Care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.Care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to the Share.Care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Now, today it's my great pleasure to welcome Mark Sais. Mark's a former critical care registered nurse and wrestler turned author, entrepreneur, course creator. He says he's a renaissance man in a linebacker's body. With his wife, Grace, he started a unique legal services business, Noble Notary and Legal Document Preparers. And together they wrote two books, A Golden Pen, The Notary Agent's Guide to Multiple Streams of Income, and A Digital Pen, A Loan Signing Agent's Guide to Starting a Remote Online Notary Business. Welcome, Mark.
Welcome, Damian. My pleasure.
It's great to have you on the show. Do you want to, what I'd like to do, and you'll relate to this, is if we can jump in that DeLorean, the Doc Brown's time machine, hit 88 miles an hour, go back in time and talk about some of the challenges and things that you overcome through your life to lead you to what you're doing now.
Yeah, definitely. So I originally, way back in the day was a paramedic, and that was something that I really liked doing. Basically being able to help people, and I feel like I had those skills. And as I got older and married and had kids, I realized there wasn't enough money in that. So I took those skills and went into nursing, found myself in nursing, which the pay was better, but so was the demand and the stress. So there was a compromise there, a sacrifice, but did that for a good number of years and worked my way up the ladder, so to say. Once I reached kind of the pinnacle in terms of pay and I guess skill level, I was at a point of dissatisfaction. The reality is that with nursing, you don't really have much foresight into your scheduling,
Right.
and you are kind of, the holidays and the weekends are still, there's still shifts that got to be filled. So a lot of times I found myself missing out on important things, made promises that I was going to be here for this, that, and the other. And the job still had, it had to have some precedence. So that was, for me, as a dad and a husband, and, that was a very that was a very stressful thing to deal with, and it felt like there was no answer in my current line, in that current industry that would be any different. I looked at the higher education, into becoming a practitioner or an anesthetist or whatever, and there was again a monumental investment to get there. And then there was still no guarantee, there'd be more money, but there wasn't going to be any better lifestyle. So that kind of pushed me into looking at, exploring other opportunities. I think a lot of nurses probably relate to that. We're always kind of looking for something to ease the demand of the job, to kind of get a foot
Yeah.
out the door, so to say. So began my journey down the entrepreneurial pathway, which has, flashed forward to take the DeLorean back to now, has been a real night and day difference. The ability to start a business and then get that business to successfully, kind of work in the background to some effect. And I think as an entrepreneur, probably your brain's always working, but to be able to have so much more flexibility in scheduling alone was totally worth the endeavor.
Yeah. It sounds like for you, I mean, obviously going into being a paramedic and nursing, that shows a lot of caring, especially if you said you loved what you're doing. So it shows that you, if I'm hearing this right, you really care about other people. And that is it. Sorry, you're going to say?
Yeah, I think nurses in general are altruistic people. I don't think anybody decides to go put themselves through that level of school and that sacrifice just for the money. I mean, I say, yeah, I needed more because I had kids, I had mouths to feed, but
Yeah.
the reality is that was something that it was already passion driven.
Yeah. So yeah, it was passionate that you're caring about others, and that flexibility, obviously, I mean, from what you're saying, family is really important to you as well. So then you've got married and you need to have time with your wife. Obviously, that's important. And then kids, because you've got 3 kids, is that right?
I got four. I got
Oh,
4 kids.
4.
Yep, I got them from five
I thought it was
from
warm in
five to
Florida.
16.
What are you guys doing over there?
You know what we're doing.
There's 4 children.
Yes.
And so obviously that requires a bit of time, especially when you've got sports and things like that to do. So as a nurse, you're on call. I have several friends who are nurses, and they're regularly on call. That was your lifestyle? Was it just
There's some of that, and then there's like the shift. So you can find yourself working night shifts, day shifts, and like I said, a lot of times they just aren't very forthcoming with the scheduling. So you may not find out that that you are on call or you're going to be on shift until last minute. So it's really hard to plan ahead.
yeah.
And most of the hospitals aren't really, they don't, when they hire you because
Mm.
they want you to come work for them, they aren't very forthcoming with the fact that you have vacation packages, but we're not going to give you vacation time. So you're not going to be able to actually utilize that. And even that's so fleeting that it's, it's almost, you could almost disregard it.
Yeah, I imagine it'd be fairly difficult from that perspective because there is such a demand for that type of work. And as you say, there's a lot of education that goes into actually being an employee in that field, and being able to be flexible, and still serve the public with nursing needs would be. I'd hate to be a hospital administrator trying to balance all that. That must be really challenging.
Yeah, their job as an admin is probably just as stressful as the job itself, for sure. I know that we've had cases where, I mean, I have pretty good relationship with like nursing supervisors, or what they would call that position, that admin, that the staffing is what they are, and
Yeah.
it's equally as a frustrating a job because they are literally have a phone that is ringing the entire shift that they're at the hospital. And it's usually nurses calling off or other staff calling off, and then them having to go back. And I remember one of my friends was a nurse supervisor, and he was stepping down, and I had asked him about it, and he's like, I just feel like a telemarketer. I'm just calling people all day trying to fill shifts. So from that perspective too, yeah, equally,
Yeah, very stressful environment to work in. And then you've also taken some time out, to do some wrestling as well. I mean, talk about that. I mean, I used to watch WWF when I was a kid, so I can relate to that. And I'm keen to hear a little bit about, what was the motivation to get into that, and what was that like?
Yeah, we all, I think same thing as a kid. I was really into that. Now, in my early 20s, one of the first jobs I took was a gymnastics instructor, actually, at a local gym. And what happened was they would after hours, um, I would work out. I would kind of practice what I was teaching,
Yeah.
and so get pretty agile with that. And then I guess at one point in time, and this was actually after I had kids, they were kind of into it, just like I was as a kid watching shows and stuff. And what the training headquarters for that is actually here in Florida.
Oh,
And
okay.
I thought, well, wouldn't it be neat to go, go through the academy of it and just see if you can, see if you can get through it. And it was pretty grueling, but it was fun. It was definitely an experience. So I did that while concurrently while being a nurse.
Okay.
And my
Yeah.
two oldest kids were just little kids then, but they'd show up ringside and watch the matches. And it was fun. It was an experience for sure. I'd say it's very hard on your body, and despite it being orchestrated, it's still very physical.
Yeah. But how did you manage that? You've described that wouldn't it be neat to do that? Describe your motivation because you said you're a nurse, you've got two children at that time, and you've got to go through this academy as well. What was your motivation to do that, take on that little bit of extra, and just give something which would seem pretty obscure to a lot of people a go?
Well, I guess in all truthfulness, I think on some level I thought, well, man, if this thing really takes off, I'll be out of nursing.
Yeah.
Anything to get out of nursing, even if it's wrestling. Um, but so there was that, and then there was, like I said, that the kids had that as like they now can go to school and their dad's a wrestler in the ring. Yeah, so
That's pretty cool.
bragging rights. I guess it's yeah. So
Yeah. So, and how did you balance it? How did you make that all work? Obviously
it
marriage.
was ve- that
Yeah.
was very it was very difficult. It was a very busy season of time, and that's all I can say about it. There wasn't a balance to it. It was very difficult, and of course, it took some time for me to go. All right, this is not for me. This has run its course. So I think you just from a wrestling standpoint, you're listening to your body. You just listen to what your body's telling you. You're burning yourself out, and from a family, I mean, they were into it. So when I would go do some of the training camps and stuff, I would bring them with me
Yeah.
and kind of make an event out of it. So
Mm,
that part of it was okay. But no, the truth is that it was just a difficult time. So I just, dug my heels in and went through it. And then, like I said, after this season of it running its course, I decided it was time to move on.
yeah. No, fair enough. And from that side of things as well, because looking at a lot of things that you do, you're a big family man. Your wife Grace. How long have you been married? 15, 17 years or
Yep,
something?
we've been married, yeah, 15 years. So since 2008.
Yeah. So you've been married 15 years. What was the support like? I mean, how does the family dynamic work? Because I know sometimes when people want to do something that might be a little bit out there, they may not, have the support at home, and it becomes really difficult. And some people don't take steps that they'd like to, because of that home dynamic. What's your, how when we getting into that detail of how?
That's a really good question. So,
Yeah.
I can remember back in like 20, I think it was like 2014 or 15, I was kind of looking at some entrepreneurial endeavors, and um, she didn't really take it serious at that
Yeah.
point. But then as time went on, she could see that I was really stressed, it was really stressed, and was kind of on board with that idea. And then at one point we tried like a network marketing thing,
Yeah.
and put a you know put a lot of effort into it. We're not lazy people. We're not dummies.
Yeah.
So we gave it a legitimate effort, but we just couldn't seem to get it to thrive, so to say.
Mm,
And so at some point it was like, well, it was a good learning lesson. It was like, well, what did I like about this business model,
yeah.
and what did I not like about it?
Yeah.
And that kind of formulated the mindset for the future endeavors. So, a year or so later after that, and I would call it failure. Actually, I still get some royalties from one of them, crazy enough. But it was never what was advertised. Um,
Mm,
so moving forward, I kind of had that concept in mind of what I liked about the business and what I didn't like about it, and was kind of looking at how I could take that knowledge and apply it to another business model. And so at that point, when I was ready to do that, Grace was on board. She realized that I had to get out of where I was, and that we kind of knew what we were looking for in some respect.
Yeah. And it seems really, from your perspective, how much confidence did that give you to step out, and do this? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you were working on it together anyway at that, the business side of things. But I mean, even going back to the wrestling side of things, I mean, how much confidence and support did it to have to actually go back and try these different things?
Well, I think that's crucial. I really honestly I couldn't imagine having to do any of those things, not having her support. I think I just
Mm,
wouldn't have like if you panned back to like when I was kind of looking at maybe some kind of drop shipping thing or something in
mm,
2014 where she really didn't. She kind of thought it was maybe just fly by night. In all fairness, it probably would have been, but I never really even pursued it because she didn't have my back. So, but then
yeah,
when she did, it was like that blessing. Like, all right, let's
yeah.
move forward and make this thing work and jump in with both feet.
Yeah, because I really want to understand that component. It seems to be, people that I've met and they have that have done very well in business. Majority of them have some very and sustainable long term done well in business. Their family life also seems to be very stable, which kind of seems a bit of a juxtapose as to what you think, because you think you'd have to work really, really hard and focus on that and exclude family. And some people do, and their family falls apart, and then their business falls apart from what I've seen. But in your situation, and from other people that I've seen, where they balance the two, the family and the business, and they're working together, it seems to have a longer term success. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We could absolutely test that. Our kids are, they're very much a part of the business. In fact, in some instances, we've actually used them for like little mini
Yeah, I've
commercials
seen
and
that in the
whatnot.
videos. You're very family. Yeah, your wife is in the videos. You and her are together. You've got the kids in there together. Yeah, it looks really cool.
It is, and they, they'll go run off with our little, some of our little notary stamps, and they'll be running off and stamping stuff and pretending to run the business too. So it's pretty neat. And we have become very good at coordinating business with family and kind of making it all work together.
Yeah.
There's countless examples of that, but I do, you do hear stories of the workaholic, the same thing. Yeah, kind of seems like it always falls apart with that kind. That's an extreme. That's not balance. That's an extreme, and
Mm.
I can't really see where extremes like that in life can benefit anybody.
Was it a conscious decision to make sure that you have that balance, or was it just something that happened naturally? Did you actually make sure, and do you go, okay, in planning your day, I've got to do these things, these tasks must be get done, but I need to spend time with my wife, I need to spend time with my children, and do you plan it out that way, or do you just see how it flows?
That's a great question. The answer is both. Um, so
Mm.
it's both. A lot of times it is planned out. It's like, all right, we need to do this. We need to do this. We need to have, all right, we've kind of been a little too busy. Let's be proactive. But then for the most part, a lot of it just kind of comes naturally as well, where we're just, it's just part of our day to day. So, but I can have the tendency to be that workaholic. Like I said, your brain will never shut off. You'll think of an idea and you want to go run and do it, or sometimes I feel like maybe I've got a stack of projects and I just have to engross myself in them, and but which is unfortunate in that moment. But then I make sure to catch it back up on the back end. So
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you're consciously aware of the time, what you're doing, and making sure that if you're busy in one day, it might say, okay, I need to balance that out on the other side. Is that's how you plan?
totally, totally, yep.
Yeah. And what about with the involvement of the children? Because a lot of a reading that I do is, talks about, well, let's use financial literacy as an example, where let's say the people that are usually very good in finances, they talk about that in their family, growing up. I have a friend of mine that their family is very wealthy. They've got 7 children and I think 14 grandchildren. But every 2 years, they actually have a family AGM where they get together as a family, talk about the finances and what they're going to do and plan out the next 2 years as a family, what they're going to do as a family, but also to the investment side of things as well. How much do with your children, is that a focus of talking about the business, those kind of things with your children?
Yeah, more so with the bigger kids, the teenagers. They have a lot of questions, and we answer them, and we kind of my oldest daughter has some of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. She actually has a pet sitting business, and
Oh,
I've
cool.
shown her, all right, well, we've got to design a business card for you, and let's get a little website up, and promote yourself in the local neighborhood markets. And so I kind of work with her on that, and then the budgeting side of it. Grace really steps up when it comes to that. Like we will actually take, we will force her to make charitable contributions out of some of her earnings,
Yeah.
which she does. I mean, she does that quite gratefully. I think maybe the first couple of times she got a big chunk of money from pet sitting, she it gave us a little bit of grief about it, but we gave her the perspective,
Yeah.
why you do this. And the reality is that when you do that, you actually learn to appreciate even more, you know, your share that you didn't give away. And then you just feel good about it too. So, we've incorporated that into our, like I said, the money side of it. Grace is really good at making sure that they're managing their money, and when they make foolish decisions, showing them the impracticality of it, and you getting them to see it from a different view. But they have the oldest kids now. The youngest kids, they don't even really know that dad was a nurse.
Yeah.
They can scarcely even recall that. Where the bigger ones, they saw the transition, so they're trying to take it in, and they're trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. Okay. And from that side of things with the children as well, I mean, having that contact with them, I mean, going from when you were a nurse and you had to work shifts and you missed that, how important do you think it is to the child's development to have that contact, that one-on-one contact, and how much do you think is needed for the children to feel loved and appreciated?
Gosh, I mean, as much as you can, but I think that kids are resilient, so
Mm.
you don't have to guilt yourself into it. I mean, I think it's like I always have to say, I know a good dad when I see one. Like I can, you know what I mean? Like I can just tell that they're involved in their kid's life.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important that they know that you care, that you do take an interest in what they're doing, and you take time to do little projects with them. Um, but then I also think that again, there's a balance where you can be. We all heard stories of the helicopter mom,
Yes.
that's kind of hovering around. And I had an aunt Carol that was a helicopter mom, and um, it's I don't know. I can't say that it did much good for her. I mean, I think that so there's a balance in that too.
Mm.
So the same time I have try to involve myself in little projects with them, I also have to set a boundary with them too. That nope, this is time right now. This is time that dad's got to do stuff. So
Yeah, I was interested in that component as well because I've had the similar sort of thing with my son where, spend time with him, but then I've got to do things and he'll come and ask a question. I say, hey, look, I know you need to, you've got a question. I've got to do this first, then I'll come back to you. And sometimes I do it deliberately just to remind him that it's not all about, what he wants and not everyone can drop things, what to just be there for you. How much of that do you think is important, from a kid's upbringing? Because it seems to be a lot now. When you look at out there and protecting kids from failure, so to speak, or being feeling that hey, this is not about them. When you look at, say, for example, sports games, sometimes now they even play games without scoring, although everyone's scoring in the background anyway. But how much do you think some of that failure is good for a child's development?
well, I think it's important. I don't think that it's like like you said, the participation trophy. I think it's important for them to experience their own trial and error.
Mm.
Your approval of them, should always be unconditional.
Yeah.
But whether or not, I think that's how they develop their self esteem, and their own confidence is by doing things wrong and then learning and then correcting on their own. And then that builds up this sense of achievement in them that allows them to keep leveling up in life. If you just protect them and shelter them from everything like that, then how do you ever really expect them to grow?
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Now, I think if they're operating from a sense of parental deficit, this can be rather obvious symptoms of that. Like the cops showing up and substance. There's rather obvious symptoms that would point fingers to there's a mom or a dad issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And from your perspective too, when you look at your relationship as well, I mean, how do you balance things out so that you have that time? How do you communicate in a way? Because obviously, people are different. No matter how much you like each other, sometimes you have differences. How do you guys deal with that? From a relationship side of things to keep a nice balance, keep love and harmony in your relationship.
That's a good question. Well, one of the things that we do, that Grace and I do, is that we will split the kids up and we will isolate one kid, whether either with just me or just her or both of us. And it's kind of like a round robin, like this time it's this kid and this time it's that kid. And then having that isolated time with them, we get to really see, you know, we get to really see their character on its own. And but
Mm.
then they get to have that undivided attention with us. So that's one of the things that we do, and it can be as simple as like a little dinner date or whatever. I remember a couple of years ago. This was actually during the COVID, and our business was doing really well,
Yeah.
really well. And but it was right in the middle of the COVID, and my youngest daughter kept talking about how daddy's going to take her to the ball, daddy's going to take her to the ball. And I had bought tickets to the junior league. It was a charity dance, and of course they had canceled it. And I was like, well, that's unacceptable. So I found a ball on the other side of the state, and we made a whole weekend vacation out of it because Daddy was going to take her to the ball. so,
Ah,
uh,
awesome. So you just found a way of making that connection and having that with your the children. So you've always got that some one-on-one time
yeah,
with your folks.
follow through. Yep, follow through
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And what about with Grace as well? How do you guys balance your time together? I mean, obviously, some people they'll get married and then they get so busy doing things and they fall out of love, so to speak, and split up and go different ways. How do you guys maintain your relationship so that you keep that spark there, that love there?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that we could unpack that for a while. But obviously we own a business together, so we work together on a regular basis and exchange ideas on a regular basis. But as far as love goes, I think that there's a same thing as a conscious effort. There's being intentional about doing things. I think that falling in and out of love is probably a normal human experience.
Mm,
Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to split up. That I think that those challenges can be overcome. I think that there's seasons in life that probably just need to run their course.
yeah. And so do you guys like plan things out to do together, like date night, those kind of things, or do you make those times? Is that like part of your schedule that you do these things?
Yeah, absolutely. We have adventures and outings that are family oriented. Then we have our intentional date nights that are just me and her.
Mm.
And yeah, sometimes it's a couples night, so we're going to go interact with other adults. So we're not just parent business owners, but we actually can get some. We can get around some other adults and unwind, so to say. Or so yeah. So and that's the same thing. It's just kind of looking at what area of our life needs some attention eh, today, tomorrow, or this week, or this weekend. And kind of audited on a day to day basis.
Yeah. And how important is the communication? Do you think to the success of a marriage? I mean, from that perspective of sometimes you're going to have things that you don't agree on. How do you address that? How do you deal with discussing those kind of items?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think that part of that is, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and don't be so, everybody's so quick to be offended. It's about, me, 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 me. and
Mm.
putting yourself into, maybe the message wasn't understood correctly. And maybe clearly articulating what's going on with you. And I'm probably the guilty party here. I mean, I'm the one talking here, but I'm the guilty one. Um, but I know that I can get entrenched in some kind of website development or some promotional ad I'm creating, and end up ignoring her or ignoring the kids or getting frustrated with an interruption of sorts. And but then I have to, take a step back, cool down, think things through, and then move forward, and own up to your shortcomings, your mistakes.
Yeah. So is part of that too being able to be in a position where you can go, for example, to Grace or to the children, say, "Hey, look, apologize. I've been a bit busy and need to spend that time," and then being comfortable or feeling safe to be able to do that, to be able to, that will be accepted. Is that the situation?
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah. Cool. Now, obviously, and that's what I mean. I picked that up from the videos and that I watched of you guys. There seems to be very strong, family, and you can tell. I think you can tell when you're looking at things. As much as people try to put on a facade, you can see through that in a lot of circumstances. And you guys watching your videos, there's a very strong family bond there, which is, that's part of the reason I wanted to do this interview with you, because of that family connection, and it's great to see more of that out there. But then you've decided, okay, you mentioned before about needing extra money or wanting a different type of lifestyle where that extra money, but also to having that balance. So you had more time for your family. But you've
Yeah,
gone into an area of business which is quite unique. It didn't really, from what I understand, wasn't something that was quite common or popular. Is that fair to say? And what was, how did you come across? How did you discover this area of entrepreneurship, this area of innovation to create that business?
yeah, those are good questions. It's what kind of how I got into it, because it's completely, going from medical to legal is completely they're polar opposites. Doesn't
Yeah.
any different. But one thing I found is that kind of that altruistic sense, or that desire to over deliver to people, to make sure that
Mm.
people get the best, what's in their best interest, carries over very well as an entrepreneur.
Mm.
But how I actually conjured up this idea was, I was doing at the time, I was doing some what they call home health nursing, which is basically where you're going in and out of people's houses and doing outpatient care.
Mhm.
And the amount of work I had to do for the per diem was ridiculous. And
Yeah.
I was like, if there was a way to get in and out and offer some kind of service that people need really, really quickly, um, I'd do that.
Yeah.
And it was just like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, well, if you offered these different, like, notary services, these tax services, different things like this, they're really not that complicated to do. They're really not that complicated to learn or get involved in. They just seem like they are.
Yeah.
Um, People will pay good money for that because
Mm.
they, on the outside, think it is complicated. So,
Yeah. Mm.
that was kind of the introduction to it. And then, like anything else in life, if you're committed to growing and learning, it will just build out from there.
Yeah. So you had this idea that there was simple things that could be done, like you say, in a lot of areas in the law, it's an accounting. A lot of things are fairly repetitive. Um, and so you noticed that that's possibly, well, that's an area where you could offer value. Did you have to go back and study more? I noticed you got a whole bunch of certificates and things behind your name. So, was it
Yeah,
more
no,
study to
not
do there?
really. It's not as complicated as not as complicated as it looks. The certificates, they are what they are. None of the other things that I've done that they've generated revenue that's far exceeded my wildest expectations, especially as a nurse, and none of them amounted to the complications or the initial investment it took me to become a nurse,
Yeah.
which seems also upside down. It's as upside down as it gets, but it's just powered by innovation and it's powered by technology, and those things, you're able to leverage. You're able to create more leverage than you can as a nurse who clocks in and shows up for 12 hours.
Was that a conscious choice? Because leverage is really a point, good point. Being able to scale is important for business to generate more income. Was that a conscious choice at the beginning, or something you discovered along the way?
No, I just learned through the process. As you start to master the process, and like I said, you start out as a nurse. I started out like everybody else at ground zero, rookie, and mastered those skills, and found myself all the way up in intensive care at the highest pay and the most complicated patients. Um, the same with business. I started with just simply offering a mobile notary service, and then I added more, and I added higher value services, and to now what I call high ticket notary services, because essentially the notary is the pivot point of that transaction, but the transaction value has increased significantly. And that is just part of that commitment, I guess, to excellence, to try to just keep leveling up, scaling up, and then you also learn the technologies that you can leverage as well, whether it's internet marketing or whatever, you name it.
All right. And so, do you want to tell us a bit about the businesses and the services that you offer? I mean, you've got a couple of websites. Do you want to talk through each of those and the services that you
Yeah,
offer?
man, it's funny when you're like a serial entrepreneur. You're like, you don't have, do I offer that? I guess I do that service too. So our base business is called Noble Notary and Legal Document Prayers,
Yeah,
and so basically we do financial and legal services on a small scale. Local business, and that can be anything from basic tax preparations to credit repair services, things like this that are pretty much everyday services that people are looking for on a daily basis. And that escalated. So what happened is that business did very well,
hmm,
and we some of it hinged on executing like loan closings, so some of it hinged on the actual real estate economy. But as we branched out, we gotten away from that to where that was just what we would call like the starter. That was like a starter position, just like the mobile notaries, kind of the introductory phase. But as we branched out and we did more, people started noticing, and people wanted to, kind of pick our brains. But the reality is that keeping that balance of life that we have, time's money,
yeah,
and we just can't be everything for everybody. So we had to figure out ways that if people were legitimately interested in what we were doing or legitimately wanted help, how we can leverage that, both for their advantage and our advantage. I remember initially we were coaching people, and we would coach them through a series of Zooms, and try to relay resources to them, and in some cases even manually helping them with setting up websites or technologies. And it was very consuming, and we had to charge them a lot.
yeah,
But it was, I think there was some frustration on their part where they felt like they're dependent on us, and frustration on our part where I can only devote so much time to you. So that led to the idea of just duplicating ourselves and our knowledge in instructional format, is manicured as we could, and that was what we call course creation, which this is a phenomenon that
mm,
is going on right now. It's been going on for the last couple of years, but it's becoming more and more of a phenomenon. And it's not just that we're riding that train. It's that I don't. For one thing, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that the process of being able to learn things from somebody uh, who can basically virtually mentor you um, is mind blowing. The affordability of it versus your standard, curriculum, college educations is night and day difference, but the return on investment is virtually unlimited.
yeah,
So so I'm a big advocate of it. I mean, part of me offering this course was I had to go learn from somebody how to, the best way to build that out, and then the best ways to market it. Um, so there was a, you know, I wouldn't nobody was offering to teach me that for free. Um,
yeah.
but but I was able to leverage the knowledge of somebody else, and of course you can leverage that on a continual basis.
Yeah, so there's the two components, well, probably three components to your business. You've got the actual notary services that you provide, and
Mhm.
you've got the Ladybug one as well. It's
Yeah.
a
So the ladybird, yep, that's like a Florida thing.
Ladybird, sorry.
Yep, yep. Ladybirds are just it's a form of estate deed to transfer property, and I think, and you could probably relate to this. I think it's important to set the next generation up with stuff,
Yeah,
and that is one way that we are able to keep the government sticky hands out of people's real estate. And in Florida, for most people, the most valuable asset that they have is their home.
Yeah.
And so we're able to set them up with this ladybird deed clause, and it's very popular in Florida. And that's part of which we teach this too. It's part of knowing your market because, well, that market's big in Florida. That market might not be in some other part of the world or
Mm.
part of the country. It may not necessarily be entirely applicable, but that is for Florida. But again, that same the principle of looking at what is my market telling me, what are the people around me needing,
Mm.
that I have the ability to quite easily offer, and so Ladybird is and ladybird.net, that is the manifestation of that. Us, as we've conducted closings and we've met with people and interacted with them, we found that this is a really important issue with them, and it turns out it is a hot item. So,
Yeah.
so we built that out, and we use, like I said, as you grow and develop and learn, you can learn to one market those better, and two create different offers so there's something for everybody along there. Something for everybody because there's people who are do it yourself, and there's people who are they want to kind of set it and forget it, and then
Mm.
there's people somewhere in the middle. And so we try to reach all of them. Try to find the most practical solution for anybody.
Yeah. Okay. So from the business, you've got the services you offer, but you also mentioned about providing courses, and then the third part is you're writing books as well, which kind of relates to the courses. So where did that need come from? You identified that as a need to create the courses, and also to did you not think that maybe this might create competition for you, or what was
I
that
get
thinking?
Yeah, I get that said a lot. Um,
Yeah.
so I think the first step, if anybody wanted to do anything like this, is to one, know what it is you're doing and that you're
Yeah.
good at it, and two is, is there a market demand for it? Other people approaching you and asking you, and they want to know, they're seeking your mentorship, and then three, go ahead and create the duplicatable process. So now to answer your question,
Mm.
am I worried about creating my own competition? Slightly, but no. If I wasn't the pro, then I certainly wouldn't be qualified to teach you if I was worried
Yeah.
about you taking over my business. So the master never lets the student know everything, just enough to succeed and enough that you will be perfectly happy with your investment. But the master is never going to teach the student everything. And then the last part of it is I'm not entirely worried about saturation. I think that people kind of get strangle themselves with this scarcity mindset, and
Mm.
I just don't. I just don't buy into it. I don't think that everybody's gonna have a different level of initiative, a different level of work ethic, and a different style and technique. And I think ultimately, no matter what business you're doing or where you are, you're going to build a tribe of people that are going to be loyal to you that I can't reach. No matter whether I'm on a podcast or I'm writing a book or anything, I'm just not going to be able to reach them. They're not going to relate to me, but they're going to relate to you. So, and you can build that tribe. You can build these steady, repeat customer base that I'm
Mm.
never going to be able to reach. And so you might as well do it. You might as well capitalize on it.
Yeah. And sounds too like from that perspective as well that you're innovating as you go along as well. So it's not like your service is static; it's constantly evolving, and there's new things being added to that. Is that fair to say as well?
That's a fantastic observation. Yes, the static or being stagnant is the equivalent of going backwards.
Mm.
Because your competition isn't. So you need to be. You need to be thinking next level. How can I get better? What's the next thing what's the market shift, for example? And when I wrote that book, A Golden Pen, kind of what I was trying to wrote that as like almost like a red flag or a warning for other notaries that were heavily dependent on real estate markets to say, hey, listen, this stuff ebbs and flows. It isn't going to stay. It might be good now, but it can be bad soon. And you
Mm.
want to have a stable business model rather than one that is solely dependent on one specific economy. And so that was why I wrote that, was for that reason. And that's exactly the message in the book, is that there's all these other things that you can do if you want to just, and not just those specific things that I'm doing that I mentioned in the book, but the mindset that allowed me to, you know, to come to those conclusions. They have a curiosity factor, having to cultivate your curiosity factor. And and I talk about my mindset, which was looking for services that were relatively easy to learn, but they seemed to be niched and obscure enough that people were going to pay for them because they didn't want to put the mental investment into it as well. So, and then hence the book. So,
Yeah. So it sounds like there's two components I wanted to explore there. One was how do you innovate, but also to you, I guess it relates to that in the sense of you were looking for areas that were easy to learn, but highly leverageable. And I mean, I have a term which, ROE, which is return on effort. I'm trying to get as maximum amount of return for the effort that I do. So talk us through how you innovate, but also to how you identify what's likely to give you, the maximum bang for your effort.
okay, yeah. So if we pan back to when I said that, as we kind of dabbled in the multi-level marketing space, that there were things that I was like, oh, I don't like this, but I do like this, and things that I don't like. And this, I could even pan back to my childhood. My mother was a caterer, owned a catering business, and
Mm,
it's a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of inventory. It's a lot
yeah,
of front loading foods, supplies.
yeah.
And so pretty much my whole life, I was like, well, that's not a good way to run a business. To have all that, to have such a heavy, to have a heavy load of product on hand or inventory. So what I liked about the network marketing was that it's turnkey. You don't. There's not really any investment. It's kind of like it's a duplicatable business.
Mm,
Kind of everything's set up. So I liked that. I didn't like the idea of having products. And then the thing I didn't like about the network marketing is that you got to be really good at sales,
yeah,
interpersonal sales, not internet sales. It's a person to person thing, and it really the people who really seem to excel at that have cultivated a very they're either one, they're incredibly opportunistic, or they have cultivated a really good sense of community.
yeah,
Um, and I was like, okay, well, I'm an introvert. I'm not necessarily going to be the best at sales, but what about having a service that was just in demand? Like people just needed it. Like
yeah,
you didn't have to sell them on anything. They were looking to have that done. All you
yes,
had to do was be visible. I
yes,
can do that. And so that's what I've done. I just built. I'm like, what are services that people they don't really need to be sold on it. It's what I call it a grand slam offer, meaning that there's no questions. They feel stupid if they didn't use your service, And then
yeah,
I borrowed that from Alex Ramosi to be perfectly fair, but have kind of had that mindset before reading that. That just cemented it in
mm,
that you can have things one that are just in demand. They just need it done, or two, you can just make the offer and the service just so compelling that there's no argument.
yeah, yeah. Sounds great. In that sense, you're identifying something that people just must have. They need to get done. I guess bookkeeping kind of falls into that same category. People need to get that done. They
Yes,
don't want to do it themselves, or they don't know how to do it themselves, and they're happy to hand it off to other people. So is that the kind of thing that you look for? Those things that high in demand, but that people don't want to do or don't know how to do.
exactly. There's a low investment and really low learning curve on my end for the services we offer, but then there's a really high markup. And so, like bookkeeping, taxes, that stuff's all software driven anymore, and the software, for the most part, is incredibly simplistic to use.
Mm,
So they are really coming to you to have that stuff done out of a lack of knowledge. Um,
yeah.
for how easy it is, and I'm certainly not going to broadcast that. But so you can offer
I
this
don't think it
service, and
matters. I think people that just don't want to do that, they're not going to do it
they don't
anyway,
want to. They don't
no
want to
matter
get in
how.
that headspace, right?
Yeah,
And you know what? They're just to be perfectly fair. They might not be. They're not made that way. They
yeah.
just weren't made to compute that stuff. So,
I can clean my
you know,
bathroom, but I prefer my cleaner to do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
We just I think we just put our cleaner on hiatus because we realized we're so messy. We're cleaning before she come to clean. Like out of embarrassment, I'm like, wait a minute, we're cleaning before she comes to clean,
I
and
know
we're
people
embarrassed
that
at
do
how messy we are.
that.
That's what 4 kids will get you. But
Exactly.
yeah, no, exactly. So same concept. It's a service. So
Mm,
you're offering a service uh, that's legitimate, and then there's going to be an upcharge for it. There's a margin for profit, And if you can add more value to that transaction in several ways. Number one, don't look at that like it's an isolated transaction. Look like it's an investment with another person that has a lifetime customer value. Meaning you want them to come back to you. You want to be able to offer them your other services. And if you think of it that way, and you think of people that way as an investment, or as like I said, kind of your tribe, it can change your business. No matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
That can change your business. If you look at everything as just transactional, like your gas station, that's a bad way to run a business. It's a
Yeah.
horrible way to run a business, especially service business.
Understood. And I know you've got to go soon. So just quickly, writing the books, or the two books, you wrote two books with your wife. What was that process like? I mean, because obviously writing a book takes a lot of effort. People underestimate how much effort it takes. What was that process like, and balancing that in your life?
It was tedious. And the first book was kind of oozing out of me from. It felt like I had to just bleed that out into the world. But putting it on paper and structuring it and organize it is tedious. There's self-discipline involved. You're just going to have to, if you're going to do that, you're going to undertake that. You're just going to have to allocate some time and some discipline. And I think for me, one of the tricks that worked very well was just committing myself to, like, okay, I'm just going to type some stuff down for 2 or 3 minutes. And what happens is you kind of get roped into more 2 or 3 minutes, but you can mentally trick yourself into not procrastinating by deploying that. So
Yeah. So just making that commitment that you're going to do it, and just do that little bit, breaking it down into small chunks, and doing it that way.
abs-
Yeah.
absolutely, that is that you can use that philosophy for anything in life. I mean, that is probably unknowingly. I know and intentionally do that now, but probably unknowingly, that's exactly how I went through nursing school. Was just one chapter at a time.
Yeah, beautiful. And for people to reach you, what's the best way? We'll put all the details in the show notes, but if you were to tell people how to contact you, how to reach out to you.
The easiest way, our main website, and probably the most visible one, is legaldocprepnotary.com. So that's where we run. Basically, that's where we kind of list everything that we offer. That's kind of the hub, um, and that's our main website for our local business. So you can see what our local business looks like, but then you can also see the courses that we offer, and some of the other the I guess the other ways that we're involved in globally, really. So
Yeah, awesome. And before we go, last question: if you were to leave the audience with your key wisdoms, not necessarily to do with business, but life, what would be your key wisdom, or wisdoms that you would share with the audience? What do you want them to take away?
yeah, that's a really good one. So I would say that commit yourself to excellence in all areas of your life, and that commitment doesn't mean that you have to join the Olympics. It means that you are committed to even the minute steps, whether it's eh, making journal entries, or it's to taking these little baby steps in each area of your life, especially the ones that need the most attention, the ones that are lacking. Just make commitments to make a few simple disciplines. And if you will do that, it will generate compound interest, and
Mm,
it can change your life quicker than you think.
love that. That's awesome. Mark, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. So much wisdom that you've shared. I love the openness as well. So appreciate that you being quite frank in sharing personal details to help others. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on ShareCare, Damien. It's been a pleasure, and I'm glad we got to meet as well.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.